Hey guys, what's up? Week 472. Let's start this off with some sad news. First, I'll talk about George Eastman, R.I.P. People always used to make a joke when I was younger. I looked like kind of a smaller George Eastman. Great actor, also a writer. Directed a couple movies too, but always remember him in Anthropophagus and Rabid Dogs and tons of other movies, including some of the post-apocalyptic movies, Big Ape. But Eastman was a presence. He was great. Always enjoyed him. So R.I.P. A lot of classic genre actors and people dying. And R.I.P. Cinema Wasteland. So Cinema Wasteland, the convention that used to take place a couple times a year in Strongsville, Ohio, that I've been going since maybe late the second half of 2009, 2010 for at the very latest. I went through 31 shows out of the 50 or 52 shows that they had, something along those lines. It just was a great show. It's one of those things that my whole year sometimes revolves around Wasteland, seeing a lot of people, met a lot of great friends. It's just these memories. I don't even know. I don't have the words, and I didn't prepare anything. But I'm sitting here thinking about it, and you're like, oh, it's always good. You take it for granted. But then no other convention I ever went to lived up to it. I only went to a couple, and it just didn't have the same atmosphere, and I never really bothered with any other conventions but Wasteland. I don't know if I'll go to something else. If something around Wasteland is planned, I definitely will go if it's full of Wastelanders, people that I knew. I met some of my best friends there, to be honest, and a lot of people that I knew from online and podcasting and movies and stuff. We all would meet up there. Moods and the 22 Shots and JP and Carly, and of course Cage was always there. I've been there so many times. The first time I actually went with my dad. I was so young. I'd never been to a convention. And I remember we stayed Friday into Saturday, and my dad really didn't sleep a wink because it was so loud in there trying to sleep. And my dad was like, man, those zombies sure know how to party. And I'll never forget that. It was just a kind of a moment I shared with my dad. Just a lot of memories tie into a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, R.I.P. Cinema Wasteland. I want to thank Ken and his wife and everybody for running that place and all the staff and everything. It was something special as far as I could tell, and I'll miss it. I'll miss the people. I'll miss going there. I'll even miss that shitty, ratty hotel that they had it in, and the Super 8 that closed across the way too. So it's weird to think that I'll never ever go to a Cinema Wasteland. You'll never ever wake up in the morning and you never go to that hotel. You'll never drive in. You'll never walk that showroom. It's kind of setting in a little bit the longer it goes on. It's a fucking bummer. I'm gonna be honest. And I know some people that doesn't mean anything. They go to different places, but this was the convention, right? For me at least. So let's jump into the reviews, and the first one up is another Golden Harvest early one here from 88 Films, and this is the Himalayan. And this one, it kind of stands out because it has a lot of younger people. I mean, like, they're younger, a lot of big people that pop up in this one in smaller roles. Like, you see Jackie Chan, and I didn't even recognize him, but you see him right on the back there before he had his facial construction. I seen Yon Biao in the very background. Sammo Hung is kind of a badass in this one, has some good fight scenes. And there's other people, like Angela Mao has been in the other two Golden Harvest flicks as well. And the lead baddie in this one, Chang Sing, I think it is, he's super familiar to me, and I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. He's got like Lole energy kind of to me, but he's a pretty convincing, kind of scary, big kind of bad guy in this one. So this plot is one of the most convoluted, and when I'm talking about Hong Kong movies like this, convoluted plots, the idea that it just kind of loses its meaning, right, when you say something's convoluted in a lot of these kind of crazy movies like this. But the one thing that does stand out is that, it takes place in like Nepal kind of area, Tibet kind of deal. So it definitely takes place on its scenery. It has these great background landscapes and all that kind of stuff. So it's not your standard Shaw Brothers or Golden Harvest sets kind of production. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit, I guess they definitely explore the cinematography aspect, and that's definitely, is appreciated, because as much as I like the sets as anybody else, this is just kind of a little bit something different, and it really helps with this one, because this runtime's a little long. I think this one's almost 2 hours long, and sometimes, a lot of Asian films could be accused of having a little bit of too long of a runtime, and I do think that some of the Shaw and Golden Harvest do, but I mostly enjoyed it anyways. But this plot here, getting to this convoluted plot here, of course it's a period piece, and we have, I don't remember that exactly, the background of this family, but they're well off, and they're the kind of leader of the martial world, this guy, and he wants this, somebody to marry his daughter that's worthy. So they have it spied out that there's going to be this guy who's really good at his martial arts, and he has an older brother who's incredibly evil, and they kind of slightly spar, and they're going to be married and everything like that. But the brother pulls a fast one, and a ridiculous fast one. He ends up killing his brother and planting a guy who's already married into the kind of marriage that looks like him. They have to put a fake birthmark on him. It's this whole thing, and it's incredibly convoluted, and it gets more and more complicated the way people start to know, and people are blackmailing and all this other shit, and it just unfolds correctly for the bad guy. It's like, man, this guy was basically assuming a lot was going to fall in his favor, and I caught myself halfway through this being like, geez Louise, come on guys, this is a bit fucking much, isn't it? But overall, this one kind of builds up to a giant fight scene at the very end, and that's kind of the showstopper here. We have this giant fight scene with all the characters kind of in this giant castle and everything like that. I think some of the characters' motivations are a little bit silly, like the father thinking his daughter did something wrong almost immediately without even questioning her, sends her off on a raft to die, all this kind of stuff like that, where I think that they do a lot of, coincidental things and things of that nature, convenient things to move the plot along to make the bad guys kind of, whole deal kind of go into place. And I mean, I'm sitting here, complaining about that stuff when I watch like wuxia movies, which are completely fantastical. And this one doesn't have necessarily a fantastical feeling, so maybe it has more of, I guess, a slight grounded feeling in it too. That's why I'm probably nitpicking it. Doesn't mean the movie's horrible or anything like that. So, I mean, it is solid, it is talky, and it does take a long time, probably the third act, late third act to middle third act. This movie's so long it has like 4 acts, but basically, the whole training montage, right, where the characters, we can't win unless we go get our training and come back and fight, because we have a small town kind of poor guy that's not fit to marry the daughter, but there's definitely some attraction there and whatnot. And I just found this movie pretty solid, pretty decent, good bad guy, good martial arts action, and it's great to see people like Jackie Chan and Yum Biaona in like a blink and you'll miss it, and Sammo Hung role, Corey Yoon, so tons of people in this movie. As far as the features, I did enjoy the main feature here, which is a commentary with Frank Jin and Michael Wirth, always full of knowledge, always talking about all the characters and pointing them out. I didn't even register that, a lot of these people were in here before they did that. Of course, I recognize Sammo, he's my boy. But then we also have Tales from the Monastery, interview with Dorian Tan, English opening and closing credits, original trailer, image gallery, reversible sleeve. And this one, I believe, was only in Mandarin, if I'm not mistaken. Mandarin and English. I watched it in Mandarin. Sometimes watching these in English can be fun. Sometimes it's detrimental to a serious story. It depends on my mood on the Hong Kong movies. A lot of the horror films I will watch in Mandarin and Cantonese, not typically English. And a lot of the horror movies actually were never dubbed in any other language, or at least I haven't come across them. But yeah, this one here, pretty decent one. Looks pretty solid. Love the glossy cover art here. And it's nice to see some of the early Golden Harvest ones get released. These covers are actually really nice. Okay, we're going to end the Gialli Guns and Gore box set here, the brutal films of Darren Ward. And the last one here is Beyond Fury from 2019. Now, the main character in here, played by what is his Michael? He has 2 names actually. He kind of changed his name, Nick Rendell, and I think he goes by Nick Roberts or something like that now. But so he kind of plays Walker in all 3 of these, and they're not really directly tied together. They definitely have the same kind of energy and whatnot. The first one being Sudden Fury, which I already covered, which is more of an SOV kind of crazy, almost fun, lighthearted one in comparison to the other 2 films. In A Day of Violence, he plays kind of this kind of dumb hitman guy that's trying to get some, what's the word I'm looking for? Redemption in his life. And the final one here, Beyond Fury. Actually, I think that Rendell turns in his best performance, and I think that Darren Ward and Nick Rendell have come a long way in their acting and directing, and I think he gets better every time in a lot of different aspects here. So, as in, Darren Ward is an English filmmaker, of course, and he's inspired by all sorts of genre cinema, including spaghetti westerns, Euro crime films, Lucio Fulci horror films, all that kind of stuff there. And you can tell he puts a lot of it into his films, so I always appreciate that. And watching Beyond Fury in 2019, I was like, I don't know. It's a mix. It's kind of a mixed bag from that time for independent cinema, especially British cinema, because I know that I've seen this sentiment before. Britain used to be one of the kings of films, and after a lot of the stuff like the Hammer stuff would die down, they never really held it into the 70s. I think they kind of fell off a little bit, and the same thing with Italy and a lot of other countries as well, and the same thing it feels like the United States is doing for me. So it's so many different places are kind of falling off or changing and adapting. But I was a little concerned when I started this box set. I didn't know how I would like them. I appreciated all of them, but Beyond Fury here, it kind of won me over. I think that I am a Darren Ward fan for the most part. There's a short on here too called Passion, which I think actually flexes his filmmaking techniques the best. His colors and everything doing in Giallo. Very good at that kind of stuff. But so we're going to talk about Beyond Fury here. So it's your standard kind of story here. A little long on the runtime, but it's kind of your Revenger, except it's incredibly brutal and sadistic. So this guy Walker, he is kind of settled down. He's married, and his wife is pregnant, and they're super excited to give birth and everything like that. And he definitely seems to have a dark past, maybe possibly in some sort of government agency, but he's out now. But he was supposed to be a badass. You kind of get that impression. And Nick Rendell's a big guy. So is it Rendell? I feel like I don't want to mess it up, and I'm saying the wrong actor's name because he's like the main guy in all these movies. But he's a big guy. And one day, him and his wife go out to dinner, and they run into some thugs, which are completely over the top, almost like Death Wish style thugs, like the Death Wish sequels. One is like Spider, and one is like Skank, and all that kind of stuff. Sullivan. They all start with S, which is odd. But so they have a run in, and his wife ends up dying. I don't want to spoil too much, but in a brutal, nasty, incredibly nasty fashion, it keeps to get worse and worse and worse. And they think they kill him. Of course they don't, and he is going to get revenge at any cost, no matter what, because his life is basically empty at this. And he's struggling with depression and sadness, but he's also struggling with his anger, and that takes over. So he kind of goes into badass mode when he runs across one of the thugs and starts to kill his way to the top. And you learn that this gang is basically this crime lord, as his son was running this gang, and kind of like a John Wick style thing, right? And then it's played by Giovanni Lamberto Radici. House on the Edge of the Park, Cannibal Ferox, City of the Living Dead, one of the all-time great Italian actors, R.I.P., one of my personal favorites. But yeah, he plays the main baddie here, this crime boss, and he's very eccentric, and his name is Lenzovich, which obviously has got to be a shout out to Umberto Lenzi, and I bet that Giovanni, old Johnny Morgan here, definitely was having fun playing that role, because he can't stand Umberto Lenzi in interviews and stuff like that. So he directed him in Cannibal Ferox, so I imagine that he was definitely taking some liberties and hating this guy, making him a sadistic monster. So yeah, basically this movie is Rendell kind of finding these people and killing them, and them getting kind of a bit of revenge and all that kind of stuff like that, and it ends in a very sudden fury and Day of Violence kind of way, right, where he always leads to these giant chaotic like shootouts or giant kind of set pieces, and there's no difference here. There's some amazing gore set pieces in here which are absolutely brutal. People's feet get completely obliterated, and when I say obliterated, I'm talking Adam Chaplin style gore. Some people compared this to Terrifier 2 and 3 style gore. I can see it, yeah, it's on that kind of level in a lot of places, but it also has that kind of action as well. I enjoy this. The goons are memorable. The main hero is actually an actor that I followed through this journey, and I think he's gotten better. And this is the first time, I think more so, that he has a character that you can root for. Even though he's sadistic and goes nuts, you're rooting for him. You're sympathetic towards him. And in Day of Violence, he was playing a guy that you didn't really care for. In that movie, nobody is likable or even to root for. And I don't need that necessarily, but they're also just kind of like the bottom of the barrel scumbags. They're not very interesting. This one, the characters are a little kind of wacky and weird. And the acting does range. I think that the main players, most of them are solid or to good. Giovanni is always interesting and fun to watch, and Nick is good in here as well. I think that it looks more professional. It's polished, I would say, and the opening credits were pretty cool. Definitely something that he took his time on and did some good work on. But overall, as far as special features, we get in those first. Making its UK Blu-ray debut, behind the scenes featurette, audio commentary with Darren Ward and Nick Rendell. The Crime Trilogy Part 3, Beyond Fury. Darren Ward looks back on making the film. Chainsaw Fun featurette. Gasworks visual reel. Visual effects reel, crime trilogy props tour, short film Passion, which I would recommend, that's very good, Passion commentary, trailers, image gallery, English subtitles. So overall, pretty solid, nice little release here of 3 movies, gialli, guns, and gore. So it's not going for too much money here, so if you're a fan of independent cinema or just brutal violence, then I think you will enjoy this. Now, they are rough around the edges, and I didn't love all my time with it, but I overall came out on the positive side, I would say, with this box set, and I would like to see him make a full-blown modern horror movie with no, if he could get the money and the means to make it. But yeah, pretty cool box set from Treasured Films. Okay, we're going to tackle the first set here of the Treasure of the Soviet Animation Volume 1. Treasure of the Soviet Animation Volume 1 from Deaf Crocodile. Deaf Crocodile, great company, does a lot of Eastern European films and a lot of animation. So there's 3 films here. We're going to talk about the Return, the Mystery of the Third Planet, and the Past. Vladimir Tarasov has done the Past and the Return, and Roman Kachanov has done the Mystery of the Third Planet. The first one on here is the Return, and this is 10 minutes. This is very abstract. The animation is great, but I don't really know what I could say about it. And it's a little oddball one here. I like the animation's interesting, going over Russia, waiting for this astronaut or cosmonaut, if you will, to make it back home, and his father kind of enters the room. I don't really have much to say about this one. It's most definitely my least favorite of it, but it was definitely a nice kind of brush to understand what I'm getting into. And I've seen my fair share of animation, kind of Eastern European animation, and I think this style was actually one of the better ones I've saw. I think this was made in 1980, but we're not going to break all these up. We'll show clips if we can, a trailer. But then the second one here, I want to make sure I say this right, is The Mystery of the Third Planet. And this one actually had a commentary and a video essay. There's two video essays on here, one for Vladimir Tarasov's career and one for Roman Kachanov's career. And they kind of go over their entire career, what they were into, how they made the animation, and talk about these movies as well. Both great video essays. But there's commentary on The Mystery of the Third Planet, and they talk about how popular this was in Russian pop culture and how it kind of even proceeded into American pop culture and was redubbed over in English a couple times, which I found very interesting. But The Mystery of the Third Planet reminded me a bit of the Bill Plimpton kind of Mutant Aliens one, just a little bit different, if you will, but and more lighthearted. This is a child's film, so it takes place obviously in some sort of sci-fi future alternate reality where we can just travel wherever we want, and a couple of professors with one of the professors, like second grade daughter, are going to go to this planet to get kind of animals for their zoo. So there's like a flying cow that they look at, and they kind of stumble upon this kind of tragedy where there's these kind of birds that are these special birds that have been kind of killed, and they think it's all signs point to the guy that's in charge of this mission being responsible. So they start to dig deeper, and they're trying to survive, and they have their couple tricks that they find to make it and everything like that, and they kind of uncover this conspiracy that what was killing these birds. It's fun, it's lighthearted, the characters are entertaining, really enjoyable. There's this wild man kind of character here that appears to be some sort of alien that's a heroic type, and he's pretty funny and one of the more likable ones. I can't remember what these birds are actually called, but this one I really enjoyed. Really solid stuff. Would recommend that one. It's about 50 minutes long, and the time doesn't feel like 50 minutes. And the last one here, The Pass. I think that The Mystery of Third Planet was 81, The Return is 80, and The Pass here is 88. And oh boy, The Pass is definitely the gem of this three kind of short films here. I think technically The Mystery on Third Planet counts as a feature because it's over 46 minutes or something along the lines. But here we go, The Pass. This one has that same abstract style of The Return, but the story is just wonderful and dark. And I noticed a lot of musical stuff in here, and they talk about that too, that a lot of the animation would have musical notes and things of that nature, and I can appreciate that. But what I was kind of surprised by how dark and weird this one was. So 16 years, this kind of giant spacecraft crashed on this planet, and these people had survived. And it appears to be these kind of giant, almost like civilizations within these spaceships that live here, and you don't really know that until they figure it out. But there's a group of older people that have been here 6 years, and they're kind of getting older, and they have their kids there, and it's kind of a last-ditch effort that we got to get to our old spacecraft. We need the gun, we need supplies, we need to somehow get there and communicate and let people know our distress beacon and all this kind of stuff like that. So they decide to go on a mission. One of the adults goes with these three kids, and they're going to go through this desert-like environment where there's these things called night creatures that come out, where the sheep that kind of visits them is this weird bug-eyed creature that was a lost pet. All sorts of strange things of that nature, but it also is completely experimental in how it does things, and also the sounds are great, the music is great, and it just gets completely weird. I love abstract and weird experimental stuff when it pertains to the story, and this movie mixes it perfectly. It's not just crazy imagery for the hell of crazy imagery, which I don't mind, but when it pertains to the story and the way they tell the story, how they show where the space shuttle is within the crevice, and they tell how it got there. It's just great stuff. This is a great piece of animation, and it is a little bit scary, but I think it's approachable for an entire family. Would highly recommend The Pass, and I'd say overall all three of the sets good, and we got the two commentary tracks on there, and they do kind of hit you over the head on the commentary tracks. They say, man, one of the guys goes on and on about how Western animation is just so boring, and especially when they do sci-fi, it's the same crap, same as Star Trek, it's Star Wars, it's this, it's never something different. And the Russian stuff kind of is, Soviet stuff is definitely a bit different, and I would imagine so, that big space race thing kind of running through, and the paranoia from the Cold War and some of this stuff. So it's an interesting kind of look at a lot of these movies and whatnot, and very entertaining. You got two, one of which is kind of a mix of lighthearted weirdness, and then you got one that is completely lighthearted, then you got the dark one that I thought was fantastic. All three are worth watching, and the second and third one I thought were really good, and the third one's my favorite. Okay, so I wanted to treat myself to something special this week. to cheer me up. And I can't get the whole shrink wrap off, so I left it around the slipcover and pulled it out the bottom here. But this is part of the Lucio Fulci Presents line from 1988-89 here. And this is from the director of Sister of Ursula, which is a nasty, sleazy jolly, which I really like because I'm a pervert. Pull out your pervert card. And this one is called Escape from Death. And I wasn't too familiar with this one. I had heard about all these movies in passing, and I kind of avoided a lot of them. I had seen, I think, the Fulci. I had seen one of the Fulci ones, of course, but not both of them. And this has a decent cast in here, kind of surprising, and it took me a second to register who they were. You know, like the main cast in here, like they're like, I think the lead actress is famous, but she's not like famous for being famous, as Ercolani said. If I'm not mistaking on which actress they said. But there's a couple of cult favorites in this movie that I didn't even register was them until I was listening to the commentary, and I was like, I can't believe that's Annie Bell. Annie Bell is in this movie from House on the Edge of the Park and a slew of other movies. Yeah, Annie Bell. I think Absurd as well. But yeah, I couldn't believe she was in this. And Zora Kurova from New York Ripper and Cannibal Ferox again. So it's got a nice little B cast here. This movie, it's a 4K and Blu-ray combo. This movie opens up bonkers. Like, it opens up with the guy narrating, and he's like, oh, and he like gets shot or something like that. And you're like, somebody gets shot, and you're like, what the hell is going on? And you completely forget about the beginning while you start watching this. And what happens is, it turns out that there's this woman who's incredibly rich. She's beautiful. She's rich. And her doctor and everybody thinks that, you know, the doctor, her husband's secretary is still there for whatever fucking reason. And this kind of strange girl and her dad is they're working the stables there. But they think she's mentally ill. It's kind of like a gaslighting story where like they're trying to make her seem crazy. And her husband died. She witnessed it. But the body disappeared forever. So she always believed he was dead. No one else really believed that, you know, he was dead. So one day her husband shows back up and she's like, you're not my husband. You're not my husband. You're not who you are. And you really don't know what the hell's going on. And there's a lot of this going back and forth, like the doctor's getting involved and the secretary and these other two kind of oddball characters. And then other people start coming back from the past as well. The actress who plays the succubus from the Mondo Macabre movie Succubus, which is a cool movie, she's in here. So it's not a relatively huge cast, but the problem with this movie is without that opening where somebody gets shot in the face and there's not much gore or anything like that, and I think people are probably expecting gore being a Lucio Fulci Presents movie, which was tacked on to the end, you know, after these were going to get released. But also it's just a little boring until that point. It does add an element of possible homosexual, well, it's not possible, there's a homosexual element in here, which reminded me of Fulci's movie Devil's Honey, which it's a much better movie than this, but it has that whole element going on. And then we have this like show-stopping weirdo crazy scene like an hour into the movie, like 57 minutes in the movie, and you only got 30 minutes left, where we have some dick carnage and whatnot. And then it starts to pick up and gets really weird and people start getting picked off. And then the reveal is just like, what the fuck ever. It looks really great, kind of like Massacre. It looks great and it sounds pretty good too. It's in Italian, but it's not a spectacular movie. But I don't think anyone actually expected, you know, most of these Lucio Fulci Presents movies, which have a horrible reputation, to be anything but watchable. And it's definitely watchable. It definitely has like some entertainment value and there's some fun things to be had. I think this would make a good group movie because by yourself it gets a little talky, it gets a little kind of gaslighting kind of storyline here. But as far as the special features are concerned, what we have here is contains 87-minute presentation, Dolby Vision HDR, newly scanned 16mm. They were all shot on 16mm, by the way. Following soundtrack, Italian language with newly translated subtitles, and a commentary track with film historians Eugenio Ercolani and Troy Howarth, always welcome. Contains everything on the UHS disc except Zora the Escapee, an interview with actress Zora Kurova, victim of circumstance, an interview with Alexandro Freiberger, Bloody Sonata, an interview with composer Paulo Gatta, Exhuming Lucio, an interview with critic Pier Mario Bocci, Escape from Death, Enter the Showbiz, an interview with film historian Ercolani. Man, I must have missed the Kurova interview because I listened to all the special features. I did not see that. Did I miss that? I must have, which I apologize. I remember listening to Ercolani and of course the Fulci kind of fanatic, but they did mention that Zora kind of had her acting career and then she moved back and had to come back, and Fulci helped her out in the commentary and everything. I gave her some roles and everything to help her out, which is great. She did a few of these kind of Fulci movies. This isn't a Fulci movie, but she got the role because of Fulci on this one, from Escape from Death. So if you're an Italian horror film fan completist like myself, then you gotta have it. I enjoyed it. I probably would watch it again, and if they release more of these, I will definitely buy them, although I am a subscriber, so hopefully I get them anyways. But yeah. Alright, let's get into those 1983 movies.
I have returned.
Okay. Show me.
Where is the music now? The sound of laughter. There was never laughter.
What's it like?
What's what like?
Screwing a psycho.
What the fuck was that?
It's gone.
Guy blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet.
31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime. Loved by many women. You might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone.
The kid was cut in half, Arnie. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel.
Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a little shovel?
One final moment of revenge.
Wondering what's real. All of it is real.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah.
Get the video, Joe! Long live the new flesh!
No choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
Living one's entire life in a state of fear. It is all I have ever known. Fear.
Are you ready? Okay, go ahead. What are you doing?
Oh boy, the first one up for 1983 is a fucking bonkers movie here. This stars Pia Zadora, who I think I've seen it a couple times, but she's got a great look. And this is based off a book called The Lonely Lady. It's listed as a horror film. God knows why. I mean, there's some horrific shit in it. That's probably what happened. And this is directed by Peter Sasdy, who was a Hammer guy, and he worked on the Hammer House of Horror television show, and he did a couple movies. So that's kind of crazy. You know, Sasdy was, I don't say when he's not like a Terrence Fisher or a Freddie Francis or a Roy Baker, but, you know, he did a couple. And mostly the thrillers and everything like that. And there's some other familiar faces in this movie. Bebe Biche, and of course Jared Martin from the New Gladiators and stuff like that. Looking at the cast and everything like that, Mickey Knox is also in here, and geez, who else pops up in this one? Ray Liotta in a small role, but with Mickey Knox and them, I was like, oh, this is gotta be an Italian co-production, and damn, it definitely was, and it is a super bizarre movie. I don't know how to go about this movie, so I guess we're just gonna dive into it. So, The Lonely Lady, I'd not really heard much about it, didn't have too many thrilling reviews on Letterboxd, but I put this in and I start watching it. And a lot of people are like, I thought maybe it'd be the subject matter and how twisted a lot of the stuff is that bothered people, and I could see that. But right in the beginning, we have this prize-winning, I think she's like a prize-winning, a best-selling author, and she's super young. They say she's years past, like, you know, her intelligence, she's way smarter and understands things way more for her age, and she's getting this award, and she starts talking about, I always want to put something new in and different to help people learn, as she gets cut off and shished, and that kind of starts the precedent how poorly she's going to be treated. treated in this like condemnation of Hollywood that this movie's going to do. But for me, this movie is kind of like that, which is one of my favorite movies, so I'm not bad mouthing about Cannibal Holocaust, right? Where it's like it's condemning all these things about, you know, the exploitation of people and how media manipulates and things like that. But to get its message across, it's also committing these acts of, you know, this incredible exploitation. So you're like, Jesus. But in this aspect, you're like, so it's basically talking about how poorly women are treated in Hollywood and how hard it is. But by this movie, you're also like putting this woman through the meat grinder and all this kind of fucked up shit. So I'm like, it is a movie though at the end of the day. So like, but so like right at the beginning of the movie, she goes, she's supposed to go on this like date, this Hollywood date, and her like she's with this kind of like schlubby guy, and he's like, we gotta go, but she wants to stay because she's talking to this world famous like teacher and writer, her son. So she's like, I want to stay, and he's like, I'll introduce you to my dad. But then he has a buddy in Ray Liotta who's like definitely he's all messed up on marijuana and violent. It's completely ridiculous, right? Back then they're like, he smoked weed and he went nuts. Yeah, so he ends up committing a sexual assault on her in a really twisted way. And, you know, instead of going to police because they don't feel like they have enough evidence or that these people will be persecuted or prosecuted because they're rich in Beverly Hills kind of deal. The father comes over of the young boy and tries to make amends, and he's a much older guy, and they end up falling in love and getting married. So you're like, oh, this is fucking twisted. I wish I would have known it was a book before it was too close to the date. I would have read the book. I've been reading all the books from the 83 as well. But so as they get married, and that starts like this obviously this turmoil where this writer on a movie set, he starts like using her ideas without saying so, and she feels neglected, all this kind of shit like that, and she ends up going through all these different men and having these relationships, and every one of them turns out to be an absolute scumfuck, bottom of the barrel, the worst possible person in the movie. The only person that seems halfway decent that's a guy is this homosexual director who actually is in All That Jazz. I think his name is Guy in this movie. He plays he's I can't remember his role in All That Jazz, but he's definitely one of the big main motivating factors for Roy Scheider's character and helps him out a lot in that one. Good actor, and I like his character in here, although he kind of betrays her too with a couple words later on in the movie. But the whole movie leads up to this kind of mental breakdown, and I was like, where are we going to go from here? Are we going to go for a revenge thing here? We're going to kill and do this violent, crazy, nonsense, insane thing. And the movie's played straight, but it has this element of campness. Maybe it's because there's a, Peter Sasdy was kind of an odd director for the project. Maybe it's because it's an Italian co-production. Maybe because it's just not translated well into screen, but it just becomes this campy, weird mess to the point where I was like, is this played straight or is this a joke? And I just could see why people would really enjoy this movie because it hits that camp element, right? Like a Mommy Dearest to a certain extent, or something just completely Flowers in the Attic, where it's like it's crossing that line of just utter absurdity to a point, but cruelty and weirdness. And then at the very end, we have this big kind of almost clever speech that she gives, on the nose, but funny and clever at the same time. And you're just like, what is this movie? So it's like basically you got to fuck your way to the top, but you get to tell everyone they're pieces of shit and it was all worth it, or you're just walking out of here. It's just a fucking weird, bizarre film. As far as the special features are, we basically only have an interview with her, interview with Pira Zadora, and a network television broadcast version of the film, but plenty of nudity, plenty of sleaze, a lot of it unpleasant. But hey, I enjoyed it. I don't think it's necessarily a classic movie, but it's definitely got a camp classic kind of thing written all the fuck over it. I don't know how much of a horror movie it is, although a lot of the shit that happens is completely horrific. I don't know where they list it, but hey, it's a cult movie and I'm glad I watched it. The Lonely Lady from Peter Sasdy. Okay, the next one is a Hong Kong picture, and it is called Sketch. And this is listed as kind of like a crime thriller on Internet Movie Database. It's so funny what they list as a horror movie. And Letterboxd calls it a horror movie. This is a fucking horror movie, guys. They're listing, like, sometimes they'll list these certain movies that are horror films. Like, this is a horror film. It's like, guys, Emmanuel in a Woman's Prison is not a horror film. If Something Wicked This Way Comes, The Dead Zone, and Sketch aren't. Like, that's absurd. Like, it's just because those are popular movies and people just like, that's not horror, and nobody's seen fucking Sketch. But Sketch is a horror film. So, and it's a crime thriller horror film. So what we have here is there's a serial killer going around in this kind of Hong Kong, like, village, isolated village here. It's not super isolated, but it does feel a little bit small, but also it seems to have a genuinely, like, decent-sized police force, or maybe the killer's only striking in kind of the rural areas, which I dig that for sure here. I like that rural kind of police procedural kind of stuff here. The aftermath of the opening kill is actually brutal. This woman is raped and killed in the chicken coop, and the way they do it and stuff, flattering around with the chickens. This movie does have animal cruelty in it, of course. pretty brutal opening, and then we definitely have that that comedy that these Hong Kong movies have. This is definitely closest in line with something like Red Panther from 1983 as well, which is also a bizarre kind of serial killer mystery horror movie, which has the comedy elements. I think this is less comical than that one, but it still has it. So what we have here is basically two detectives on the case. One of them, which is a younger guy who's not from around here, he's an outsider, and we have a local. So they're kind of paired up here, and the local guy is kind of, he knows all the family, and he knows all these people, and he's trying to help figure this out, while the new guy is getting a hard time. His wife also suffers from some sort of mental illness, some possibly anxiety and stuff of that nature, and there's a gang that's led by the mayor's son, and he has like a group of 5 or 6 guys. Some of them, one of the guys is definitely a familiar character actor, and they're just pieces of shit. They run this town, they sleep with prostitutes, they beat people up, so you don't really know. He's definitely, the lead guy is definitely a suspect, as well as there's a couple kind of people that have a history of sexual kind of dysfunction or degeneracy, I guess you'd say, in this town, and they're also on the list here. So we kind of plan all these possible suspects in here, and there's a new person in town who's a psychiatrist or psychology. I don't fucking know his name or doctor, what's translated correctly, but he just moved to this town. He's got like bad skin and he's completely demented. And he's also a suspect. So we have all our suspects, and there's some gaslighting being played to the point where the husband doesn't even believe that his wife is actually telling the truth. And people get picked off here and there in kind of violent fashion. But the reveal I thought was pretty fun. I didn't expect the reveal to be that. They threw me for a loop a couple times, but then when it was hitting to a certain point, I was like, oh no, we're going to do that. And I was actually happy with the reveal. I thought that sketch was pretty damn good, to be honest. I was entertained with it. I thought it was above average Hong Kong horror flick thriller deal, and I thought it was better than Red Panther. I thought that for how many little people have rated this thing on Letterboxd, I like the look as well. It's kind of like that. It's got a darker look than it should because the quality's not great, but I love the location being in that small village on kind of the like coastal kind of water and everything like that. I like the guy who plays the local cop, also in a ton of movies. I believe he's in the Inspector Wears Skirt series, where he's like the male kind of inspector guy who's always trying to like date the lead female inspector in those movies, and he's got a good comical kind of style about him. But overall, I thought sketch was pretty damn good. And it kind of, at the very end, we have this whole like big kind of festival that happens, and like people are trying to figure out who the killer is and stuff, and the cops split off and stuff. Reminded me a little bit of Double Impact at the end there, but hey, entertaining movie, sketch, check it out. Okay, this one is really interesting. Another kind of crime thriller, last horror film here, and this is The Next Victim from Brazil. And what I've noticed is a lot of the South American movies, like you watch the Colombian movies or something with a Carne de Carne and stuff like that from the early 80s. And there are some sexploitation stuff too. Some have the comedy elements, but they all seem to have a gritty element, especially like you start doing these movies like Pure Blood, which I really liked as well, from 82, and the Carnes from 83. I think that's Colombian. Pure Blood, I think, is Brazil. That's Colombian as well, but this one being Brazilian, I was like, okay, we have the old Coffin Joe movies from the 60s and 70s and stuff like that, and they have a sense of brutality as well. This one is very dark and gritty, and it says it's based on true incidents, although nobody in the movie is based on any actual, and this is during a time of like political regime change, and the people are, upset on the streets and things of that nature. And we have this reporter who, he's like one of these type of characters that obviously probably comes from a better background than most of the people that he's interested in investigating and things like that. But he's our intellectual type, and so he wants to be involved with this case when these prostitutes start to end up being murdered brutally. And there's actually, it's not like in that sense that like it shows the murders, but it shows the aftermath, and they're graphic. Like I don't know why they're filmed this way. That is actually bothersome. It reminds me of the opening shot again in Pure Blood when we go through the hallway. We have the sprawled out bloody body and everything like that. But there's a couple of these aftermath shots of characters where I'm like, oh, it looks like real crime footage and stuff, being the reporter and stuff. So he starts to dig deeper, and you can tell that they're trying to railroad these certain people, this person into being the murderer and stuff, and he wants to dig to the bottom of it and figure out. Well, at the same time, he has a taxi driver style thing going on, and instead of like Travis not sleeping with Jodie Foster, he ends up having this relationship with this 15-year-old prostitute. While he also has a relationship with one of his co-workers at the same time, and he's like separated from his wife and kids. So his life is complicated. He's a very complicated, iffy ass character, and you can see why like some of the people that live kind of lash out him at one point. And I thought this was an interesting movie. There's also like political stuff going on with like the kind of guy running the police force and everything like that. All sorts of stuff of that nature. I liked how it was shot. I liked the characters. I thought it was pretty interesting. I do think the opening two acts are a little bit more interesting to me than the final act. I felt like, not that I thought it was bad, I felt like it was maybe losing me just a tad bit towards the end of the film, and I think the beginning was just something that sucked me in right away with the way it was shot and the way that it had going about it. But I thought this was really good stuff. The Next Victim, I would recommend this one. And there's a point in here where one of the guys who runs the hotel suggests something, and it was straight a line out of Cruising, right? Or the idea of Cruising, right? It's always somebody different, right? They're black, they're white, they're Japanese, they have dark hair, they have light hair. It's always somebody different, right? Always different, many. And you're like, oh, so there's suggestion that maybe there's something else besides, not a supernatural element, but maybe some sort of conspiracy, or it's just not the same person every time. Like we got a Boston Strangler situation or something of that nature. But yeah, the Cruising, that idea, right? That it's a different killer, and it's just the idea that that whole idea there is batshit crazy. If you haven't heard Joe Rubin talk about his proto slasher, his like kind of weird slasher kind of movies episode he did on the Secret Top 10, he goes deep into Cruising, and it's great information on that. I might have to listen to it on Anchor or Spotify on podcast. I think it probably had to be edited on YouTube or something. But anyways, I thought that The Next Victim was an interesting, different movie, and I didn't expect much out of it. I didn't know what to expect, but I'm finding a couple hidden gems in 83 movies that, maybe they flirt with the horror, maybe they are borderline horror, but I would call this probably thriller, crime, then horror, drama horror. But I've seen a lot less horror movies that are less horror films listed as horror, and a lot lately. But yeah, good stuff. All right, we're here for another special Patreon review, and this time around we're doing the 1975 movie Johnny Firecloud. And this was basically a patron said any Buck Flower movie I hadn't seen, so I got on my letterbox and I was going through it, and I was like, Johnny Firecloud, that looks kind of familiar. Did a little research on it. I had heard about it in passing, and it sounded like the one that I was definitely going to watch, right up my alley. The big thing here is I didn't know this was produced by David Freeman, and that would have made the world a difference, because some of the stuff Freeman produces, not a fan of, but some of the stuff he's had his hands in, I absolutely love. So the cast is the one thing, and I'll let you do the bigger names in the movie. I meant the headliners besides the main baddie. But for me, I'm drawn in by the character actors. So, of course, we got Ralph Meeker, who I've always liked. We got Buck Flower, of course, goes without saying. John Golf is often basically his partner in crime. Richard Kennedy. So we got a nice cast in here, and then we got a couple familiar faces in the lead. The guy who plays the Native American, I've seen him pop up in a few things.
Yeah, a lot of some people that are doing like a lot of episodic television and stuff. But yeah, I was actually surprised when you had mentioned that you hadn't seen this before. It's a 70s revenger. I figured it would have been right up your alley.
It is.
So yeah, I was kind of surprised when you were like, well, it's one of the picks is George Buckflower thing I hadn't seen before. I'm thinking about these two, and I was like, ooh, Johnny Firecloud would be a fun one to do. And yeah, I was very surprised you hadn't seen it before. And like you said, a Dave Friedman production. So the plot line for Johnny Firecloud from 1975, it's essentially, it's a setup you've probably seen 24 times. It's basically the setup for, I could probably name 15 blaxploitation movies right offhand that have, more or less the same setup, where a man comes back from Nam. In this case, he's a Native American and not not an African American. A guy comes home to a small town after fighting for the country in Nam, meets up with a bunch of good old boy racists who are basically terrorizing the local minorities. Eventually they take things too far, and he's had enough. And he turns the tables, and he's out for revenge. And that is more or less the entirety of the main plot of this. It's funny, a lot of times movies with this sort of plot line, you will get some sort of subplot where, the big dog in town is, out to do some like shady real estate deals, or, clean up and, make some sort of profit. They dispense with any of that stuff in this one. It's basically, they're just dicks.
They do have a subplot in here, and the subplot is kind of wild and weird. So Ralph Meeker's got the sheriff kind of over a barrel, if you
Right.
will, in kind of a way that he knows a lot of dark secrets about him back in 1975, Dark Secret.
Right.
And I thought that character was really interesting because at first I'm like, fuck this piece of shit cop. And then over a while, you're like, oh, wow, now this guy is a little bit more nuanced and he actually becomes a pretty solid character. And did you listen to the commentary on here?
I did. I did.
It was pretty funny what Hennelotter was saying about the crowd. And he's like, if they
Yeah.
don't know what to think, they always just stay quiet. Like,
Well,
I remember having that at The Witch. Like after The Witch was over, everybody was
Right.
like, "What the fuck was that?" Like I didn't. It took me like a few minutes to register if I liked it or not.
Yeah, and it's true. And I mean, I guess we can kind of discuss it. I mean, if anyone doesn't want, any sort of the side stories of Johnny Firecloud spoiled, fast forward to the next chapter. But it's revealed that the sheriff character in this is actually like a closeted homosexual, and he was kicked out of the military. He got drunk one night, and he was walked in on by a superior officer, so he actually got kicked out of the military for homosexuality. And Ralph Meeker's character knows this about him and is basically blackmailing him, into doing his bidding. And he's kind of being forced to do it. He knows that, what he's seeing here is wrong and he is opposed to it. But unfortunately, he's, not yet prepared to kind of have this fight with himself, and kind of have this thing revealed. And it is, a very, the 70s were way different times, and especially, it is very surprising to see a character of that sort be portrayed sympathetically and as like a fully
And not
realized
comical.
three-dimensional character. Right.
Yeah.
Normally in exploitation movies, you'll have, these sort of like mincing types or, these,
Or
just
even-
joke stereotypes.
Even
But
in
he's-
1980, we were there.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't answer the phone. Like, come on.
Right.
Like,
Which strangely shares another similarity to this, but we'll
Yeah.
get into that in a minute. But yeah, it is one of the more refreshing things about this movie, and one of the more interesting things about this movie is the way that it does kind of sympathetically handle this character. And that's really, one of the surprises about it. And it's something that to me kind of elevates this movie a bit higher than you would typically give something like this credit for.
and it's also good for us because it's produced by David Freeman. So when he gets his hands on things, and I know this sounds terrible, and say what you want, he adds a gratuitous amount of violence in it, and the violence in this looks so much better than the fucking Herschel Gordon Lewis stuff he touched.
Right,
It's like
right.
it's shockingly good. I didn't know this movie was going to be that brutal, and the Hicks in here are almost cartoonishly over the top to the point of disgust. Where I was like, "Fuck
Right.
these people!" Like I would shoot them in the fucking head and sleep like a baby.
Right.
The one scene, and like I don't want to spoil everything, but there's spoilers here. There's a couple, there's a rape scene in here, which I was kind of like, it was brutal, and I was just like fucking nasty. Point in here, and there's of course nudity too, but I don't think any of the nudity is fucking pleasant. So it's in there.
Yeah, it's I mean the girlfriend character who is Christina Hart, her nudity is a little more erotically played, but Sasheen Littlefeather, no, definitely not. That's
No.
just a brutal assault scene. So jumping back to the gore, so the gore effects were actually done by Joe Blasco. And he was, he got his start in some low budget things like, Garden of the Dead. He had done the effects for Ilsa
Underrated.
She-Wolf for the SS already at this point. And he went on to, he actually founded after this, he did some Cronenberg stuff. He did They Came From Within and Shivers. And he's kind of noted as, They Came From Within and Rabid. They
Okay, I
Came
was
From
gonna say,
Within
like-
being AKA Shivers, right? You're
Yeah,
like,
I was
they're
gonna say,
they're
same
the same movie. Jesus Christ. And he was he's known as kind of being a pioneer of the bladder effect, so in Shivers, when they have that guy's chest there and it's like pulsating and, things that we will see throughout the 80s through, pretty much every transformation movie, you look
Within.
at stuff like Beast Within or
That's the
Miracle
bladder
Orphan
effects
London.
movie.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, he's kind of, given credit as being sort of like the real pioneer of that effect. But he went on to found a makeup effects school, which was really kind of the first of its kind. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a special effects makeup artist. And I remember writing down to them. They had a school down in Orlando, Florida, and they sent back like this package of information, including like, all this stuff of, prior people that had gone there, and like a photocopy of an old Fangoria article about Joe Blasco, where it's talking about like his makeup for the Cronenberg films, like Ilsa She-Wolf and stuff like that. So yeah, I just thought it was like super cool. But my parents were like, "Oh, maybe you should like look into something, a little
real
more practical."
job.
Right? Yeah, pretty much.
My
pretty
parents
much.
were always like,
Right.
"Yeah, you could do the writing," because I was like, I
Right.
wanted to be a writer. Is that you could do the writing, but you should like get another backup, like
Right,
so you're
yeah,
not
yeah,
like
pretty
they always
much.
like
Pretty
they
much.
like were always good about that stuff. Like, oh yeah, you should do that. It's great, but
Right.
also like
Yeah,
you need a
right. Maybe,
backup plan.
maybe go to regular college first, and then,
Yeah.
I'm just like, fine. But yeah, so
What do
yeah,
they
I,
know?
I know, right? Well, and the funny thing is, like, had I gone down there, I graduated in 1995. So had I gone down there and, done this special effects, course, I would have been certified and out on the job market just in time for CGI to take over all of the
Yeah.
makeup effects jobs. So
You'd
it
have
would,
been Donzo.
right. I was gonna say, so my parents would have actually probably been right, but whatever. That's not the point.
I do want to mention some of the we said Buck Flower and John Golf were in over 40 projects together. So
Yeah,
that's insane
yeah.
to think that. And Ralph Meeker was with Buck Flower a couple times. And the one that I want to mention is Golf, Meeker, and Flowers, again, is probably Bill Robain's best movie, The Alpha Incident. I think it's his best film. I think it's a good film too. And Ralph Meeker was one of those character actors that was in a lot of bigger films early on, like The Dirty Dozen and St. Valentine's Day Massacre and Fruit of the Gods. Not a big movie, but that's one of
Yeah.
our kind of. But he was always a really solid actor. But I think he suffered from a stroke in late 70s, early 80s, and after that he was kind of pushed into like minimal roles. You'll spot him in Without Warning, and one
Yeah.
of the as a bar patron, and
I think
poor
that might have
Ralph
been his
Meeker,
last thing, right?
he can't really do anything in it. I mean, he's surrounded by a bunch of nutso actors like Neville. Who's in there? It's Jack Palance, Martin Landau,
Jack Palance, Martin Landau.
Cameron
are the
Mitchell's in
other-
there, but he's not in
right.
the bar. I don't want to say Neville Brand's not in that one, is he? He
Is he?
seems like he'd pop up in the bar, but I don't think he is. I think it's Martin Landau and the crazy, but he could easily have been in that movie too. But yeah, that's a little
What did
sad
I
about
just
Meeker.
watch? I just watched something with a young Neville Brand in it the other day. What the hell was it?
Is it the one with Anthony Perkins and he's like a sheriff? He's like a young sheriff, and he has to stand up to him at the end.
It was definitely a Western, but I don't remember what
Shooting
it was.
Star, is that what that one's called? There's one with Perkins, and he's like a young sheriff, and he's got to stand up to him. And I can't remember who the big actor.
It may have been. It may have
Jimmy
been
Stewart.
It
Jimmy
may
Stewart.
have been it may have been the Elvis thing that I watched the other day.
Oh.
If he's in Love Me Tender, then that's what it was, because we just watched that the other night. I know we've slowly been making my way through the Elvis filmography.
I do.
Anyway, so Ralph
Also,
Ralph,
want to mention. Let me.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we're going to Meeker some more.
I was gonna
and then
say, yeah. So Ralph Meeker. I mean, the main thing I knew him from. I don't know if you're a film noir guy, but he's in Kiss Me Deadly, which is one of the better noir titles. So I mean, he's kind of a mean son of a bitch in that one. So I mean, he always kind of really left an impression on me from that. So yeah, that's always like what I mainly knew him from. But yeah, he's one of those guys that's always cool to see pop up and stuff.
He's good. He's also in The Night Stalker. He's his buddy that lets him down. I mean, he's a great actor. Those are the actors I get excited about. People are excited about a lot of the big guys. I'm like, it's got Ralph Meeker and George Kennedy in it. People are like, who the fuck are you? What?
Right.
But and also Richard Kennedy. This is a guy I've seen a handful of times in movies, and I'm starting to put it together now. Rewatching the Ilsa movies, the first two he's in those. He's fantastic in both of those, but he's really great in
yeah, because Ilsa She-Wolf is the way
he's the general.
He has the woman piss in his mouth. Like if I remember correctly, or piss on his face or something,
but
right?
He's also in Harlem. He's got
he's a harem keeper, right? Yeah,
he's harem keeper. Yeah,
playing a different character, right?
Harlem. I keep calling it Harlem Keeper. That'd be a great movie.
That'd be a whole different movie, right?
Ilsa in the Hood. It's like Leprechaun. But then we got Kennedy was also in, which I didn't even remember him being in this, but this is a movie I watched numerous times. Witch Who Came from the Sea. He's with Buck Flower, and they're both police detectives, and John Golf is in that as the father. That's a great underrated movie.
It really is. Yeah.
It's kind of like one of the best video nasties that shouldn't have been on the list, but
yeah, it's kind of like a dark, twisted little psycho character study.
Yeah,
the woman in that, fantastic.
We should get into like some of the stuff in here, I feel like the main Native American character is pretty nuanced too, because he's a character that's so prideful and he tells people off all the time. And to be honest, if he was a little bit more careful with how he handled his grandfather and the teacher, they might not have ended up in such a bad way, to be honest. He refused to, I guess blow smoke up his grandfather's ass. You know what I mean? He's an old drunk guy, man.
Right.
But he somehow like inspired him, but to rise up against him. But in reality, I'm not saying to kind of like back down in this situation, but it's really tragic what ends up happening to all the people around him.
Right, yeah, it's a lot of peripheral damage. He comes home and basically stirs up the pot a bit.
Yeah.
Kind of yeah, getting all these local yokels really wound up. I mean, and it's set up that, the Ralph Meeker's character, who basically runs the town, he's a big racist. Johnny Firecloud had, a relationship with his daughter that he disapproved of. She got pregnant. He left for war without even knowing that she was pregnant. She turned to alcoholism because Ralph Meeker was hiding, these things. She thought she was abandoned by him. Turns out he was writing her letters the whole time, and the dad was just intercepting them, and basically, not only, essentially ruining his own daughter's life, driving her to, become this just sort of, hopeless lush. So yeah, and once Johnny returns, essentially he's framed for a rape, which isn't a rape. It was purely consensual. But yeah, they use that as an excuse to throw him in jail. And while he's in there, again, these locals are pushing things too far, and they end up murdering the grandfather, which is the catalyst to spur Johnny's revenge.
I love how the revenge takes place. He fucks these guys up. He royally fucks them up. And the first one, I was like, you got to scalp somebody. I mean, like, that's such a brutal way, like, to kill somebody in general. And that scene where he walks in and I saw the first bit of gore, I was like, oh, this looks really good. And in the 70s, we're even looking back at stuff like 79, like Phantasm, or some of the early Italian ones, like Suspiria. I don't know necessarily if that was on purpose or not, or Dawn of the Dead. The blood is not great looking. It looks like paint, and that's the whole kind of gimmick here. And I'd always would like be like, well, the real blood came in, yada yada. That's not necessarily true, because the blood on this looks great. This actually has some of the better gore effects for the time, to be honest. 70, I'd say that's very good.
So the first I had heard of the movie was in 1992. I got a copy of John McCarty's Splatter Movie Guide Volume 2. Of course, I bought Splatter Movie Guide Volume 1 at the same time. And there's this company in New York called Fantico, and they used to do, they always had ads in Fangoria and stuff. And that's where they would sell like all the Chaz Balance stuff, the Gore Score and Deep Red Magazine and stuff like that. So, I mean, you put out a book called The Splatter Movie Guide. Of course, I'm going to want to buy that as, a 15-year-old. This came out in 1992. So I bought this, and one of the reviews it had in there was for Johnny Firecloud, and I'll send you pictures of these because it's probably not going to show very well on the
How long is the review? You could just read it.
Well, no, but one of the things, it actually has a picture of the scalping in it.
Richard Kennedy right there.
So that image stuck in my head. Now, none of my local video stores actually had the tape. So it wasn't until I was like 16 and I started driving around more and exploring other video stores that were within driving distance until I finally found a copy. But that image of him walking into that church scalped, that big
putting in a church is also demented. Yeah, he walks into a church.
Right, that big bloody head wound always stuck with me, and that was what made me originally rent the tape. The tape was from a company called A&E Video. It was, this, plastic clamshell box. Not great cover art. It basically is mostly like a black cover with like the rectangle in the middle. It's an image of him like with blood on him after he was beaten up. So nothing that would like really make you pick it up and be like, oh, I need to see this. But yeah, they had done a few other movies I had. Like they did Umberto Lenzi's Iron Master.
Not an amazing movie, but an amazing cover.
Right. Yeah. Now that one has good art. They like Franco Prosperi's one of those other sort of like 80s Italian sword and sandal things. But yeah, just a handful of things. Ninja Wars, that Sonny Chiba Japanese thing with huge blood spurts and people vomiting all over the place. But yeah, so the last time I actually watched this, eventually it came out on DVD in 2001 is the copyright on the back of the DVD. So it's actually been like 25 years since I've watched this. So I'm actually kind of, always looking for an excuse to rewatch a goodie. But it seems like it's kind of fallen off a lot of people's radar.
Yeah. I had only seen it in passing, and it was actually a surprise. It was more shocking than I thought, and I didn't know that Something Weird had put this out on DVD as a double feature with Bummer,
Right.
which is probably not something up my alley. I probably wouldn't hate it, but it's not something that I would seek out. I'd watch anything,
Right.
but the one thing I do want to mention is what blew my mind listening to the commentary is that 20th Century Fox picked this up for international rights and everywhere except Canada, the United States. So this movie got a lot of play around the world, and it had so many dub tracks that Mike from Something Weird was talking about too. It was really odd hearing that commentary and realizing that two of these guys are dead.
I know.
It was bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, it was Dave Friedman's most expensive production at the time. I think he said he spent like around 220,000 on it. And yeah, it was, apparently it looked good enough. I mean, they shot it in scope, which was one of the things about the VHS tape that I never realized was that I was missing half of the picture information. Now it's well shot, but it's not like a Sergio Leone movie where there's like stuff happening in like the periphery of the frames where you're just like, you staring at the middle of the screen, like what the hell's happening? But yeah, I didn't realize that the tape was so brutally cropped until I saw the DVD. But yeah, Fox picked it up for international, and he said that they basically just in the advance for international, they paid him back like the entire budget of the movie already,
250,000 or something like that.
Yeah. So he was already sitting pretty, and essentially any profit that rolled in from North America, was pure profit at that point.
I'm kind of shocked that Vinegar Syndrome or AGFA have not grabbed this, or Bleeding Skull or something. It's not a bleed. It's too good of a movie and straightforward and serious. Like it should be a Vinegar Syndrome type.
It will be. It's because they got all those all the Dave Friedman stuff. AGFA had them originally, and then I guess sort of decided to wash their hands with them. So I mean, Distripix has slowly been going through this exploitation stuff. So yeah, I would not be surprised that if we see Johnny Firecloud at some point in the future.
This is definitely one that should hit Blu-ray. It's an underrated movie, and I love my revenge movies. And then the fact that it has the exploitation stuff in it, but also is nuanced enough to be good. I've always appreciated movies that were like, we're going to entertain you, but we're going to make you take your medicine with it too. Because I feel like this is one of those movies. Like Humanoids from the Deep to me is always like that too, where it's like it's got good messages in it and stuff, but at the same time it's just like straight
at the
exploitation.
Same time, it's just just
yeah.
So
So I'm like,
blood and
what
everywhere.
What the fuck is this? And I always tend to like enjoy those. Sometimes they can be like knock you back and forth a lot, but when it works, they're always beautiful. And this one, it works really well. The lead guy, he's also in Ghost Dance, which is part of that early.
Which is actually
80s.
pretty decent. Yeah,
it's decent. And it was shit when I first saw it on like a VHS ripped, and then when I watched the Blu-ray, I was like, this is a little bit better than I saw because I could see what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, if Ghost Dance, if Ghost Dance had like one or two more killings in it, it would be like really good. That's
the one in the museum's really good with the glass. That's a good kill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the movie, but it's a little bit slow.
Then Johnny Firecloud is the guy who actually is possessed in Ghost Dance, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah,
I think it is him.
Yeah, Victor Mojica. So what? Like many people, like all the major Native American characters in this movie, none of them are actually Native American.
They're all Italians,
right? So Victor Mojica was actually Puerto Rican.
Okay,
but yeah, and apparently he also has a small role in Don't Answer the Phone, which I don't remember him being in. The only character I can think of is maybe he's like one of the pimps, like later on in the when he's going, Kurt Smith is going out to get the prostitutes and stuff. I think there was like a pimp character. I'm like, well, maybe that was him. But I mean, I haven't watched that movie.
He fights one pimp character and he breaks the bottle over his head. That's a black guy.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, that's in the hotel room. I think it's I think it might be one of the guys out on the street, but I could be wrong.
Maybe the guy runs the hotel.
Maybe. I mean, it's been I haven't watched that movie probably since I worked on the DVD, so that's been like 20 years.
You gotta rewatch that movie. That's great.
I really
Nicholas
love
Ford
it.
steals that whole movie, and it's got
fantastic.
It's got Porky in it from Porky's.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, these are some nice pictures. That guy popped up in a few movies from when I was going through the 80s. I was like, this fucking guy. You don't forget
Right.
that dude once you see him.
But yeah, Victor Mojica, like, I mean, at this point, or Mojica, I think Friedman pronounced it Mojica, but the trailer pronounces it Mojica. So I'm going to side with Friedman, I guess, and go say
Yeah, I would
Mojica.
too, because we don't want another Tobe Hooper
Right, yeah, good old Tobe Hooper.
or Harlem keeper of the SS.
But yeah, he was he did some small television work, not a regular, but would just do appearances here and there and some small movie roles. So I'm sure this was like the casting of a lifetime. Like, oh, a lead in a feature, I mean, who wouldn't jump at that? Friedman did say it was a SAG production, and I think he paid everybody SAG scale, but still, lead in a real movie. I'm sure he was thrilled for this. So yeah, the other two Native American characters. So his dad, who was let's see, I have Chief White Eagle. He was a guy named Frank Dakova, and he was actually Sicilian. So he was not
shit.
even,
You could
he was,
tell.
both his parents were Sicilian. So it's not even like there was a hint of Native American. So he was another guy. He played like a lot of TV stuff, but he also did like a lot of Western movies and small things. But he played a Native American guy a lot.
You think he'd ever slip through when he was like, "You're talking to me all wrong here"?
Yeah, no, right. He does the wrong role because he was jumping from like either gangster stuff or cowboy movies. But he hit it big on F Troop. He played a different Native American chief on that. Chief Wild Eagle, not to be confused with this chief, Chief White Eagle. No relation, of course. They weren't banking on that at all. But yeah, he did 63 episodes of F Troop. And I mean, that was a big 60 show. But yeah, I mean, I never would have guessed he was a Sicilian guy. I never.
He did look Native American to me.
Yeah,
and usually you can spot. You're like that guy's not.
Yeah, I was gonna say I never once doubted his credentials until I was looking into this. I'm like, holy shit, the guy's Sicilian. I was like as mad as when I found out that like Lou Diamond Phillips was like Filipino or whatever. I'm like, what? I know.
I just stopped recording.
I'm done with this conversation.
I'm done with this.
So the third character would be Sacheen Littlefeather, who plays the school teacher, who unfortunately gets assaulted in it. Her big claim to fame at the time was she was the one who respectfully declined the Marlon Brando's Academy Award. So she came out at the Oscars when he won for Godfather 2 and said basically Marlon wouldn't accept this award, and gave this whole spiel about, because of, the way that the, indigenous peoples were the treatment of the indigenous people of this country and all this stuff. So it became like, this big to do. And she became a huge like Native American rights activist. But it turns out that she was like the Rachel Dolezal of her time in that, somebody, doing research years later found out that she was actually of Latin American descent and not Native American. So, she put on this whole big thing, and that like wasn't even, Sacheen Littlefeather is obviously not even her real name. It was like Maria something or other. But yeah, so like, so like the three main, Native American characters we have in this movie, none of them were actually Native American.
Well, you know what's really fucked up?
What's that?
Turns out that Ralph Meeker was actually Japanese.
Oh.
No,
I didn't know that. Oh, damn.
I complete lie. That would be funny though if there was something like that, like Meeker. Because guys do that too. With them like Bronson, like hid his last name, so people would know that it's like, man, your last name sounds really Russian.
Right. So yeah, the other main character I did just want to mention on was, the girlfriend character, Christina Hart. So, she had done some sexploitation stuff like The Stewardesses, and she had some small roles in like The Mad Bomber and Charlie Varick. Her sort of biggest thing at the time was, she, or at least cultist thing at the time, was she played Patricia Krenwinkel in the Helter Skelter TV movie. That was, a big miniseries event, based on the Manson murders. But something I didn't know until I was looking this up was that she was actually married to Frank Doubleday for like decades. And he was, he's one of the gang members in Assault on Precinct 13. And, he was in Escape from New York and stuff like that. So yeah, I was completely unaware of that as well.
The last thing I do want to mention is some Buck Flower, because somebody did pick this for Buck Flower.
Oh, right.
Buck Flower's classic in it. Your classic, oh, I'm a piece of, that,
right,
like just redneck hillbilly. He's great at that. I don't. He's actually probably one of the better character actors. He's one of those guys that I'm always excited to see Buck Flower, like a Joe Spinell, just popping up like there. And I don't think Buck Flower ever really got a starring role.
No, not that I can think of. Yeah, he's always just kind of in these, small little supporting characters, just walking around and blah, blah, blah.
We always used to do this. It was my favorite thing in Wishmaster. Like, he gets cancer, and fucking dies. I just thought that was the funniest thing in the world.
Well, like, speaking of which, so there one line of dialogue from this movie I did write down and I forgot is at one point when when Johnny Firecloud first shows up back in town, he's at the pool hall, which actually ends up being a pretty cool little brawl. Like there's a guy there's like one guy who gets thrown through a pinball machine and stuff. I'm just like, oh, this is actually pretty rough and tumble little knuckle duster here. But when he first starts getting in a fight with Richard Kennedy,
he gets in a fight with John Golf.
Yeah, Richard Kennedy says the line to him, "One of these days, me and you is going to tangle assholes." And that just made me laugh so hard. I had to write it down.
But Kennedy doesn't actually fight him.
But he's there during the fight.
Yeah, he's there. He's
playing poker with Ralph Meeker, right? And because he goes in, he breaks the pool cue and he's going to stab him with it.
Yeah.
If memory serves. And yeah, he's like, and the sheriff stops him and he's like, "One of these days, me and you is going to tangle assholes."
I don't even know what that means.
I know. It was so funny. I had to write it down.
Just like the little intestines from Dead Alive or something. I don't fucking know what's going on. But I love that the bad guys are really just children. Like when they're pushed to a shove, they like just break down and cry like babies. All three of the main goons do. There's a couple other goons in here. Like one of the guys that gets the axe to the head is so fast and so sudden. Then you see him just like dead, and you're like, "That's fucking rough, dude." He butchers these guys pretty bad. But there's also another thing, and I guess we're gonna spoil the shit out of this movie. Is that you expect this big climax at the end, and it doesn't happen.
Right?
Like the main baddie does not die.
Yeah. I mean, he almost does. I mean, Johnny Firecloud whips up on him pretty good, but yeah. He doesn't actually get killed, and you expect it to have, right? Everything kind of builds in a revenge movie to the climax, this sort of cathartic climax. And instead, we sort of have this kind of weird, almost existential standoff, this sort of dialogue scene between, the sheriff and him. And, it's kind of a bit more of an ambiguous ending, rather than this sort of, the gruesome payoff that you're kind of expecting. So yeah, and that it does kind of stick in your memory because of that. But at the same time, it doesn't feel unjustified. It does feel kind of organic to these characters.
I wonder if actually the sheriff went back and did something about it. You never know. It's kind of like, what is that? The Confessions of a Police Captain. Not quite as good as that, but that ending's fantastic. At the very end, it leaves it open-ended like that after all the fucked up stuff. But yeah, it's not quite as good as that. I mean, this is, after all, more of an exploitation movie, not like a high art crime drama or something like that. But no, I was impressed with it. I didn't expect it to be as big, as polished. When I saw David Friedman's name, I was like, oh, this could go one of many ways. You know what I mean? And then it was like, it just had the cast. I was like, huh. And I was thinking maybe it's going to be something on a level of like a Bill Robane, like, the Alpha Incident. And it was spot on that level. I think it was a little bit better than that.
I was going to say, I think it was a little bit better than that. I mean, to me, it plays... it doesn't play that far removed from like the big studio sort of crime movies of the 70s, or the sort of these drive-in movies. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like it cheaps out on anything. So yeah, I could, it's not. I mean, I can see it playing on a double bill with something like Rolling Thunder without issue.
As the B picture though.
Right. Yeah.
It's definitely the B picture of Rolling Thunder. But that's a big expensive movie too, though. It's got a big cult following, I would imagine.
Right.
No, I liked it. Way better than expected.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna think like 5.5 to 6, and it was like a 7.
Yeah. And that's where I ended up landing on that as a 7. It has well-written characters. It might be a little long for what it is. It's like an hour and 40 minutes, for this type of movie, especially with one that doesn't really have much in the way of, it's pretty much A to B for the most part. I mean, it does have some surprising depth to the characters that you wouldn't expect in a movie of this type or this level. But it is a little, I would maybe 10 minutes too long for, what's basically a simple revenge movie.
I would agree with that.
But overall, 7 out of 10 is not a bad rating. It's, really solid, above average, little 70s action movie.
There's a commentary. It's pretty much the only feature that I know of. That's decent. They talk about a lot of the people involved, and Friedman can't remember if this is the hard or the soft version, and it's most definitely the hard version. Like, you know what I mean? But there's probably other stuff like shot as well. I can't probably remember half the things that I did, let alone this guy.
Right. Yeah, who made all these movies, right? And trying to remember them, 40 years later.
It's people think I hate Herschel Gordon Lewis movies, but at the point, like, I don't hate all his movies, and Friedman produced them, but I'm starting to think Friedman might have been the guy behind, like, why they were any good, some of them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
He's a better producer than H.G. Lewis is a director.
Yeah. Because Ilsa's great too, even though he didn't have the hands in the editing. He definitely was responsible for Ilsa.
Right.
A lot of it. Because Don Emmons, he did direct Harum, which is a great one too. I like that one. But Don Emmons' other movie, Terror on Tour, is terrible.
I kind of like Terror on Tour.
Terrible.
It's not
nothing
that
happens. It's horrible. I'll rewatch it. It's horrible. When it gets Blu-ray, I'll rewatch it with eventually.
He did. I think there's music rights with that one. Unfortunately, I saw like a 35 millimeter print of that at one of those Exhume shows, and it looked mint. It looked like it did not play like a screen in its life. There was like no damage to it. The colors were great.
Somebody should tell all those Hong Kong movies that fucking there's music rights.
Yeah,
because I thought they stopped caring about music rights at this point with releases. Because about half the movies that get released, I'm like, what?
Yeah, I know, right?
I did watch that Pattern of Roses recently, which is like a British TV movie, and those fuckers had the Beatles in it. I was like, oh, this is never gonna come
that's
out.
never coming out, right? Another good Don Emmons. Have you seen Bare Knuckles?
No.
Oh, that's actually a pretty good one too. That's a good, solid drive-in type movie. Watch that. Somebody who is one of your Patreon subscribers should suggest that one, so we can come talk about that one too.
For sure, you can come back whenever. I liked the movie. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, same. Not to steal Ebert. Respect to Ebert. 2 thumbs up.
Respect to none of them. 2 thumbs up.
All right, guys, let's get into these questions, comments, and concerns. Explosive action. I disliked the Prey for so long as the VHS in Australia was the gypsy cut. Wasn't until the Blu-ray, I'm going to say it like that from now on, that I knew there was a far tighter and more exciting shorter cut. Mr. Tony the Dead gives me a wave. What's up, Mr. Tony the Dead? Check his channel out. Then Door Kitty Film. Tinto Brass. Cheeky is a high mark for sexploitation. I remember the cover art well. I don't know if I've ever seen Cheeky, though. Audio Love 1976. Just Jack also directed Pearls of Gwendolyn, Tanti Katian's first film. I forgot that he directed Emmanuel. Oh, I love Pearls of Gwendolyn. Super fun adventure movie. K&J Horror happened to have the original VHS of Dr. Dracula. Nice to learn the original title alternate cut, Lucifer's Woman. Neat. Thanks for checking out the channel, man. K&J Horror, also good dude. Knows his VHS. Way up, dude. Mrparka's the man of movies. I appreciate it. Vanessa Hex. Love Vanessa here. We worship Godfrey Ho in our house. Haha. I'm stoked to grab Born a Ninja and Commando the Ninja. Also totally agree on the shortest cut of the Prey being the best of all 3. Smile. I think everyone is. Stephen LeBlanc. Malcolm McDowell from Caligula. That's the first Malcolm McDowell credit you came up with? Oh, yes. He was also the lead in the Stanley Kubrick masterpiece, but still, Caligula. Love you. Need to rewatch Malcolm McDowell's other cinematic achievement, Blue Thunder. Hey, you know what channel you're at? Come on, man. This is pervert card world here. Of course it's Caligula. And Stephen LeBlanc goes on. So I've gotten a Blue Thunder because of this video, and he shares a video a while back, but just finally watched it. Incredible. The live helicopter stunt work and VFX were completely off the hook. Thanks for the nudge. Yeah, it's a great movie. Thanks for Arrow putting it back out. I've actually covered it a couple times in here. It gets better every time. Indie Phantom, Son of a Cinema. Always liked Blue Thunder, and it was an early Blu-ray purchase for me. Saw it with my dad at the drive-in and the theater in '83 on a double bill with Space Hunter, Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. Beyond Sour Ground. Hey, Dave, I'm sure you probably already heard about Wasteland by now, and if not, I hate to be the messenger of death. I was devastated by this, and I'm sure you're feeling it as well. However, I don't want to bog down the comment section of your show with doom and gloom. I meant to comment on last week's video, but didn't in time. But I knew you had some problems recently with censorship and YouTube penalizing you as a creator. I hate to hear that. It's certainly one thing I don't miss about making videos, but since since we're talking about how you might move forward if YouTube does ever delete your channel. I was just curious, as if you've been on YouTube for damn near 20 years now, how long have you been backing up your videos? All the weekly videos would be saved, but for that, I don't know about everything else. The weekly videos and the horror and 1980 on would be saved, but a lot of the other stuff, early reviews and some of the Wasteland footage would not be. If somebody wants to back it up and make their own Wasteland cut of all that stuff, go right ahead. And with the loss of Cinema Wasteland this week, it occurred to me that whatever people documented over the years is likely the only footage of Wasteland we'll ever have. I know Art always recorded the panels, but unless someone else recorded a lot of convention footage over the years and kept it private, you probably have the largest archive of Cinema Wasteland footage, even if it's mostly just people walking around and talking shit. Yeah, exactly. I wish I would have known. It's kind of sad. I'm sure there's other people that filmed as well. Nick from Flanders, I have some decent memories about Blue Thunder. No doubt I have better ones after I watch it on 4K. Who can say no to Malcolm in Singing in the Rain mid-now? Haha. Would you recommend Mr. Fulci's Zombie 2? I asked because its lead, Ian McCullen, is return to acting Larry Brewster's Chronicles of Depression. Listen. Don't even be talking about Laurie Brewster's fucking movies if you haven't seen Zombie 2. Go watch Zombie 2. It is literally one of my top 10 favorite horror movies. It's one of the Fulci's best. It's one of the best zombie movies. It's one of the best movies from 1979. It's one of the best Italian movies. It's got one of the best scores of all time by Fabio Frizzi. It's so good. It is an amazing horror movie. It is an all-time classic. And I'm not trying to be rude, but to even ask me, is Zombie 2 worth watching, is just like, you haven't been watching this channel at all, but I know you have, so it's like, it's crazy. It's crazy. Go watch Zombie 2. Last week's comments, if you still have the energy, YouTube AI seems to be after you, sir. Watch your back. I got an AI bot to watch my back for me. It'll be alright. I've always wanted to reacquaint myself with 10 to Midnight. It was so weird, thrilling, and more than a bit scary watching it at age 15. But who could say no to no-nonsense Charles Bronson? I actually think I read this, to be honest. I think I read this one last week. Maybe I'm mistaking. I do remember reading this, so I'm not going to read it. Ken Coakley, I forgot to ask, do you plan on going to any other horror cons to replace Cinema Wasteland? I don't know. Time will tell. And then Ken Coakley, I saw Blue Thunder at a drive-in in '83. It was showing with hard bodies. I know Blue Thunder's frame by frame. I became a Roy Scheider fan after Jaws and Jaws 2. Fun fact, Scheider also starred in the 1965 Del Tenney horror movie Curse of the Living Corpse. Saw that late-night movie show when I was 8. That was around the time Jaws was released, but I wasn't allowed to see a lot. I also have been a Candy Clark fan since I saw The Man Who Fell to Earth at Drive-In in '76, as well as a George Lucas re-release of American Graffiti a year later in '77. I like Malcolm McDowell after seeing Clockwork Orange time after time and get crazy. Also in '83 with Blue Thunder. Co-star Daniel Stern, who I liked seeing Diner in '82. I liked Warnos because of Stripes, 1941, and a TV movie that was a pilot for a TV show based on True Grit starring Oates as Rooster Colburn. The pilot aired, but the TV series never materialized. I also liked Oates from watching The Wild Bunch on TV on Sundays. He was my favorite after seeing him a bloody mess screaming while he kept shooting the Gatling gun. I think it's machine gun. I think it's technically not a... I don't know if it's a Gatling sort of gun. But yeah, absolutely. Gatling gun's the rotator. It's got a thing in there. Who cares though? But yeah, he's absolutely amazing when he screams in that scene. Blue Thunder, which also became a TV show, works as a psychological thriller. I hate to typecast Roy Scheider, but he became Brody all over again. Paranoid about a black metal object instead of a slate blue with a white sea predator. The scenes of Scheider being reprimanded by Oates reminded me of the scene in Jaws 2 where he tries to tell the mayor that they might have another shark problem. Mayor Vaughn says to Brody, "Don't push it this time," which leads the viewer to believe that Brody may have PTSD. After all, he saw a man that he bonded with eaten alive and was almost eaten as well. In Blue Thunder, he has post-traumatic stress disorder from being in Vietnam with Malcolm McDowell. I didn't know there were Brits in Vietnam. The only scene I didn't like was the nude yoga scene. I always have to freeze frame it because I'm shocked and have to freeze frame it to believe it. Then I have to stop the freeze frame because the TV screen hurts my nose after 20 minutes or so. I also wanted to make a comment about Night Riders that didn't get read. Night Riders is my favorite George Romero film outside the Dead trilogy. Every time I watch it, I feel like I'm hanging out with friends because of his usual cast members like Ken Foree, Scott Reniger, John Apples, Jim Buttafuoco. When you reviewed Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, I remember Romero did the audio commentary and mentioned that Morgan Freeman was offered the role of Merlin, but he declined, saying that Merlin's lines were too ghetto. So Brother Blue got the job and nailed it. Brother Blue became a teacher at Harvard. He taught Shakespeare and modern urban speak. A very good friend of mine knew Brother Blue because they did poetry readings in the same bill. On New Year's Eve, this friend kept bugging me to go to an annual event in Boston called First Night. I gave up and went. And then I found out that Brother Blue is reading poetry in Dorchester. Sorry. I'm having trouble with After the surgery, my mouth's not exactly 100%. I wanted to go so I could meet him, but my friend didn't want to go to that. I made him promise me that he would introduce us. He never did. The ending of Night Riders was copied in the final episode of Sons of Anarchy. Both protagonists committed suicide, but intentionally getting creamed by a huge truck. Both had the camera showing a bird, and both showed their helmets rolling in the road. Also, R.I.P. to Jonathan Thurston. I was shocked I didn't know until you mentioned it on last week's show. RP to Donald Gibb as well. I saw Revenge of the Nerds at a theater when it first came out. I went because I was a Robert Carradine fan after seeing the Pom Pom Girls and the Long Riders, and an obscure movie called Aloha, Bobby and Rose. Yeah, I've seen that one as well. With what is that guy's name? From Paul Lamont. Yeah, right? Gibb also did an HBO show called First and 10. The show is about a professional football team. Jason Bengal from Monkey Shides played the team's quarterback, and Delta Burt played the owner. So, yeah, that is it, guys. I'm just going to do this quick update here. It's only 2 titles. So, first up is Hunter's Blood. Can't believe Hunter's Blood is on 4K. One of my favorites, 1986, exploitation movie. Great cast, Clu Gallagher in here. But, yeah, the one thing I am going to complain about, look at the back here. I don't know if you guys can tell how detailed that looks here. But the front here, it's sun-faded as a motherfucker. I don't know how they printed it. It just does not look necessarily great. I'm not going to complain that much because it wouldn't matter that much. I still would have bought it. But for some reason, the print on the cover here just looks a little dull. The blacks are fucked. But great release here. I can't wait to dive into this bad boy. 4K. Amazing. Love Michael Felsher's Red Shirt Pictures Company, kind of the Synapse deal. I look forward to Fright Night 2 and the Prom Night movies and everything like that. And last, next up is the Pusher Trilogy. Now, I got this earlier, and it had the 3 disc, and it only had on 2 disc case, and they were all shoved on there, and it was rattling around, so I sent it back because the one of the 4Ks was damaged. I don't know if they actually they put this one in a 3 disc changer here this time, but regardless, it's not rattling around, so that's good enough for me. Of course, Nicholas Winding Refn trilogy here on 4K, good price, but I don't know why you'd put 3 disc in a 2 disc chaser on 4K. They're delicate. So, but anyways, we're out of here, guys.